Hey there everybody, Eric from OUTER LIMITLESS coming at you today with another video. Now in a prior video we took a look at this Menoceras from the company Wander Tactical. I put this to some good use in fire prep applications, but in my opinion there was one, and I'm not going to say fatal flaw, but one sort of deficiency that I knew was easily correctable, and that is the edge angle on the secondary bevel. Now, since that video, I have gone back and forth with the people at Wander Tactical about that exact issue, and they said most of the Menoceras actually are either like a full scandi-grind or a full convex edge, and that was one of the things that I thought where mine had a secondary bevel, I thought it just left it a little bit lacking. So in today's video, what we're going to do, I actually put this on the stones, get it to a new grind, and as you can see here, nice secondary bevel there, a little bit larger, a little bit steeper, and just going to be a little more just bitey and grabby than the original. And so what we're going to do, I go through this in detail, got it on the stones, got that new angle, and then I need to go outside and test it to see if it actually worked and improved the performance for my needs. But with that said, I have a whole bunch to do and a whole bunch to share with you, and if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. Now before we get too far, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Wander Tactical who did provide this for review. And so now, as we get into the reprofiling of the edge on this Wander Tactical Menoceras. Again, this is a fantastic knife, just a great little field knife, an awesome companion knife, and one that I definitely just want to perform. And in D2 tool steel, this is a great blade steel. I do have excellent luck with D2, and I think it's a great serviceable steel, but it can be a little bit difficult at times to get a reprofiled edge. So this is going to be a nice test for me. Let's see how my skills are. By the end of this, we'll find out. This is literally off the chart, so wider than 24 degrees to the best of my understanding. And so you'll notice that I am using a wicked edge sharpening system. This is nice where it's a guided system. So now taking a look at 27 degrees. I am okay by hand. I've done a number of different sharpening techniques in the past. I've used diamonds, I've used whetstones, a number of different techniques, but the best thing that you can do, in my opinion, if you want a good, accurate edge, use a guided sharpening system, and that is definitely an advantage you get with the wicked edge system. Now, I am using a Sharpie here basically to draw right along the edge of the blade. This is going to do a few things, but more than anything else, it's going to allow me to really gauge where I am, where I'm starting, and what kind of adjustments I might need to make. Sometimes factory sharpening has one side that's at a different angle than the other, and by using a Sharpie with a guided system like this, it will definitely allow me to figure that out ahead of time. And that's going to aid in the overall quality of the job by the end. So getting established early is important. It's going all the way up to 1,000 grit just to check the edge angle. And so up front, as I mentioned, I am going to check the edge angle. Now, I'm going to use the least aggressive stone possible. This here being the 1000 grit. Now you can add all kinds of different polishing stones, lapping films, but I don't have any of those. Unfortunately for me at this point, I really only have the stones and they are all diamond. So not a big deal, but if you use the 1000 grit, all I'm doing right now is just hitting that edge of the blade, working on the Sharpie and trying to remove a little bit of that black marker so I can expose the steel beneath and see what the angle is from the factory. This is the very first place I'm going to start in my sharpening process. And so as I take a close look here, you can see that the shoulder where the secondary V-grind meets your primary bevel is shiny. And in my opinion, that means that this grind is wider than 27 degrees. And as we take a look at this side, it's really just that fine little stripe again. It's not getting all the way down to the bottom of the grind. And so in other words, if you really think about it, at this point, you know, if this was steeper, at that point I'd be getting more and more shiny showing all the way down to the V grind. But again, where this is so broad, I'm really only catching the edge where it meets up with the primary bevel. So at this point I need to bring the angle down significantly and we'll come up with a solution here. So I think this is going to work, but I definitely need to get everything brought down to a steeper angle. And so I'm going to bring this to about 18 degrees. That is about right. I sharpen my T17s to about 17. I'm going to go to about 18 here, and I think that will about do it. So this is my goal. At this point, we'll get the knife set back in the rig here, and we'll get started. Being D2, this is going to take a while, and it's going to be tough, and I want to work my way through all the grits. So here, 100 grit. I'm going to take my time, 10 passes each side. I'm just going to alternate and try to bring that angle down, and at some point, when I feel like I've got it about where I want, I'll move forward to the next grit. So just going to continue to step my way the entire time, taking my time. Hopefully this will come out pretty nice. I think it should. And so now, as I get into the actual sharpening process, this can be a little bit difficult. And for me, the place I really like to get started is nice and slow, controlled and easy, leveraging the coarsest stone here, and this is going to establish my edge. So you'll notice I'm going very slow, very methodical, equal number of passes on both sides. Again, I am kind of working my way down and through some of that marker, exposing more and more steel, and at first it can have a ton of bite, a ton of friction, and not be very smooth until you kind of get things moving and you've taken a number of passes and worked on both sides of the blade. So you'll see, just taking my time, establishing my technique, getting used to the stones, used to the geometry of the knife, and really establishing my reprofiling up front. Again, leveraging the most aggressive stone here, the 100 grit, and then eventually going to work all my way up through 1000. Now, each one of the grits is going to remove the grinding from the size below. So in other words, 200 grit will take away the scratches from the 100 grit. 400 grit's going to take away the scratches from the 200 grit, and so on and so forth until I work my way all the way up to 1000. So again, the bulk of the work, the bulk of the reprofiling, and the heaviest duty work is going to take place right away with the 100 grit stones. I do need to use these basically all the way until I get my new edge geometry. So continuing to work here, nice and methodical, from the base of the blade all the way up to the tip, and making sure I don't cause any damage to the rest of the knife or round out the tip. For me, this is what's going to take the longest as I'm trying to establish my new angle. I want to take my time, make sure I go easy. I don't want to cause damage to any other parts of the knife. I want to get my rhythm, get kind of in the zone here. This is going to be a long process. This might take as long as an hour, maybe more than that. So just taking my time now, establishing my edge, making sure I take my time, do it the right way. That's going to really turn out the best in the long run. But so far, starting to establish a new angle here, but I got a ways to go. So we'll see how this turns out. So I still have much more marker on my right-hand side here versus the left, which tells me I need to do a little more work to this side. So just going to take my time, try to knock the marker off of this, and once I start getting it to the point where it's about consistent on both sides, I should be closer to an even bevel. And so you'll notice that as I continue to work along the knife, I have a couple of different techniques. Long sweeps, short sweeps, semi-circles, so to speak, but all along trying to keep it even on both sides of the knife. Working around the base of the blade, up towards that sharpening choil, working towards the tip of the knife, and all the way in between. The belly, getting a nice focus, trying to ensure that everything I do makes this a good, even grind the entire length of that blade. This is going to be, again, absolutely instrumental in the quality of this reprofile. That's definitely helping. So I'm going to remark this. I need to get this about as good as I can with the 100 grit stone. So again, checking my angles, taking my time, making sure I do this accurately. Just going to help me check where I'm at. And by the end of this, again, the 100 grit stone really will be what establishes the overall reprofile. So it's getting close, but I still have a little ways to go. Which again, if you take a look, right up against the edge there, a very thin black line, which means my stone is hitting beneath the V. And on this side, even thicker on that black line. So I got some more to go on this side to knock it down. So now as you get a look at this, I am gaining on it, but I still have quite a ways to go. As you look towards the back end of the blade, so towards that sharpening choil, you'll notice a thinner edge here, and then working towards the tip of the knife, it's thickening out. Now, that is an indication of the actual grind angle starting to show itself. Now that I'm creating a steeper edge, you'll notice that it is getting higher and higher on the blade there. So that's going to be a little bit of a consideration just as far as how far I can take this. But I think I'm on the right track. Things are looking pretty good. And you can see I still have a ways to go to even everything out. And that is the case on both sides of the blade. Now, it's going to be very hard for you to see, but you can actually see where it is starting to actually change the angle close to where that V grind, the secondary bevel meets up with the primary grind, but at the same time, it's still not quite working its way up all the way to the cutting edge. So I definitely have a ways to go on this side as well. Now that you see that edge much more even from the sharpening choil all the way to the tip, still a little more work, but I'm going to lighten up now. I've been going fairly heavy. I am still on that 100 grit stone, but you can see much more even. And as I flip the knife around, fairly even and a better edge. However, you can see it did tend to widen out on me just a bit towards the sharpening choil, but I'm going to even everything out. Again, I'm still going to keep working this with that 100 grit stone, but you can see here that's starting to look really good. I mean, you can definitely see the difference. And so the 100 grit stone definitely taking quite a while. This part for me was at least an hour's worth of work alone, keeping in mind the fact that at this point I do need to continually work at this and beyond with all the other grits. So taking your time, being patient, and really setting the time aside needed to do a good job, that will pay off in the long run. So just running the marker again down the edge, I'm basically at this point just going to check it to make sure I got everything. And at this point, in reality, all of the marker should come off if I did this right and I did it well. So just a last double check here. And as we take a look at this side, yes, looks to be fully cleared off from what I can tell. And I would say yes, with the exception that this didn't go all the way out to the tip, and yes. So, wow, it's definitely starting to feel very sharp, and I am happy with this. So I am pretty shortly going to change to the 200 grit stones. So I'm about halfway through the 200 grit at this point. I have turned the stone around, running the 200 grit. It's been about maybe, I don't know, maybe 12 to 15 minutes. And just trying to really even things out at this point. You can see looking really good. Pretty good on both sides. This side definitely coming out a little more even. There was something about this side that for whatever reason you can see it does widen out a little bit. Again, but not a big deal. Overall, this is going very well, so I'm getting pretty happy with this. Now, one thing to consider with the Wicked Edge system, and it's something I haven't quite talked about yet, but you'll notice that each one of the grits is a different color. It's kind of nice having the color-coded stones. It makes it very easy to remember what you're working on and to make sure that you don't mess up. The last thing you want to do is be working on a finer grit and then accidentally flip the stone around and reintroduce heavy scratches or deep gouges with your coarser stones. So the last thing I want to accidentally do is flip this from the orange around to the red, go from that 200 down to 100 grit. So very effective. And after a very long process, I am finalizing with the 1000 grit stones. Now, this is certainly not a full mirrored polish edge, but it doesn't need to be. This is D2 in the first place. And second of all, it just needs to be a nice, sharp, and serviceable edge. So at this point, I would say this is about as good as I'm going to get it. Now, I am definitely happy enough with this. And at this point, I would say this is pretty much done. So, woo, baby. That is sharp. And so after a couple hours of work and some very significant effort, where am I coming? Where do I land? Well, you can see here as I get this on the gauge, I actually nailed it. Got this absolutely perfect, and this is ringing in at 18 degrees, exactly where I want it. And so now as you take a look at that secondary bevel, much larger grind. That's the first thing you're going to notice. Just a lot more silver showing there, a lot more grind. Very good overall. Not the best job, but I'm fairly happy with it. And so when you take a look at it up close, you'll also notice pretty good. There's a couple little, sort of tick marks here and there and things. I think it's pretty much just, debris and leftover dust from the sharpening process. But generally speaking, a fairly refined edge. And so as I mentioned, absolutely not perfect, but I mean, in terms of a good quality, serviceable edge, not quite mirror sharp, but it's pretty darn good and fairly even, all things considered. So now at this point, this is 18 degrees. So that's an 18-degree edge, and this is the side that came out just a little bit better. But on this side, not too bad, all things considered. And as I mentioned, I mean, just a little bit of a waver as it gets closer towards that sharpening choil. Widens out just a touch, but at the same time, pretty nice. So, not too bad. That's going to get me going, but how does this now perform? That is going to be the question. And so at this point, let's get outside and put this to some field use. So the first thing I'm going to do is some carving. Now, that was the first thing. This edge was skating over the wood, and at this point I'm hoping it's going to have a much nicer bite, and right away feels pretty good. I mean, the ability to just rip into that wood now, that's good. Much easier. In fact, let's turn the corner here. I mean, much more controlled, and I can find the edge, and it has real nice bite. I mean, just ripping through the wood now. So I would say from the carving perspective, vastly improved. Now in terms of getting some fine little curls, just taking my time, finding that edge. Definitely, I mean, they're not sticking to the wood, but very easy to find that edge and get some reasonably fine curls here. And I was definitely struggling to do this with the original factory grind. It actually feels really good. So I am happy with that. And you can see reasonable results. And last but not least, I just want to check the overall durability of the edge. Not that I'm going to be batoning anything significant with a knife this small, but now that I've made the actual edge steeper, let's just make sure I didn't do anything to compromise it. And where D2 can be chippy, this would be a place to show it. And so now just batoning down through a number of pieces. I'm not going to do a crazy test here, but just enough to test the overall quality of the edge and the overall edge retention, and then beyond that, the durability. So now that I've changed the edge angle, I want to make sure that it's going to hold up. I want to make sure that I didn't compromise the integrity, and by the end of this, I have a knife that's good and serviceable, all things considered. So after batoning a number of pieces, what did I find? Well, here, as I take a look at this, looking up close, and not that that was a super stressful test, but this looks really good. I have no worries about this edge. Looking at it here in detail, no chips, no rolls, no notable damage. It is super razor sharp. So for this knife, in my opinion, I feel like the 18 degrees is about the right angle, and it seems to have performed extremely well for my needs. Now, sometimes fat wood can be a little funny, and certain knives do struggle. So here, getting on the fat wood, so far really easy to get on it. Nice chunks, healthy chunks, no problem. Getting a little deeper bite, oh yeah, just ripping right through that, no problem at all. So that's not a problem. What about some of the finer stuff here as I lighten up? Oh yeah, finding that edge easily, working right down the wood, no problem there. Getting myself both some sort of kindling, but also nice little tinder source to potentially start a fire. And for a knife of this size, this is a perfect task. And especially where you have the sharpened spine, it's going to work out perfect. So this is a vast improvement on the carving capability, in my opinion. And so, all right, guys, a little project with the Menoceras. Awesome. I'm really, really happy that that worked out extremely well. So all things considered, you know, thinking back, it's real easy to get a nice steep angle on a blade, but it's really hard to go the other way if you want to bring it out and get it a little bit more shallow. So the fact of the matter is, my ability to actually get on this, tighten it up, get a nice sharp blade, that was really the intent. But again, I might not have been able to do that really as effectively if it was already kind of in that range to begin with. So all in all, I do have to say, very nicely done. I love this little knife. It indexes extremely well. It's comfortable. The sheath is fantastic. It makes a wonderful sort of shoulder carry, everyday carry, just a nice little utility fixed blade. So now having that good sharp edge reprofiled, working extremely well for me. And so again, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Wander Tactical who did provide this for review. And for the rest of you, if you like this content, do me a favor, take a look at my Outer Limitless 2 channel, which is more on the tactical and firearm side of things. At this point, that channel is growing quickly. I have a ton of videos up there, so if you like what you see here on Outer Limitless, do me a favor and check me out on Outer Limitless 2. So all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.